Hello guys, today I have a review for you of the MCHOS G3 Ultra mouse, and this is a mouse that I was very eager to try because it has the same shape as the G305 and is better than it in every way except two. First, for the contents of the box, this mouse comes with a very stiff cable which is honestly unplayable, at least for me personally if I needed to use it wired, such as when running out of battery. And besides the dongle and the adapter, it comes with some grips that I haven't bothered to put in because I personally rarely lose grip in mice, but if you want to use them, they're there. And this is a longer demonstration of the cable. As for the coating, it's very similar to the G305 where in terms of coating, there is no coating, at least on the sides. On the top, I'm not even sure if it's a coating or just plastic, and it does feel like it has some kind of coating, but it's nothing impressive like Endgame Gear or Pulsars, and it still feels fine even with sweaty hands like mine, at least on the top, but you might find it gets a little slippery on the side if you sweat too much, just like a G305. Now for the clicks, at first I was impressed with the quality and feel of the clicks considering it's a $50 mouse, and they say this particular model has some around 100 million switches, and they feel pretty good like most on-run switches. However, the more I used it, the more of a post travel started showing up on the left click, and not only that, but that post travel started feeling more and more creaky. And when I say creaky, it feels creaky, but you can't really hear it. It's more of a feel. But it does have a pretty significant post travel. You can see it here. As for the scroll wheel, it's pretty good. It's quiet and has defined steps. The scroll click is good too. I have zero issues with it. And in the webpage they say it's a TTC Gold wheel encoder. I have no complaints here. The side buttons have a little bit of a pre-travel and a really big post-travel. I generally don't care about the post-travel in side buttons, and generally all mice have acceptable pre-travel for me personally, so no complaints here. The clicking itself is just fine. And here is a closer look at the post-travel. As for the skates, they are kinda big, not too big, and they feel average in terms of speed, at least on glass. And yes, I am using default skates on glass for the time being, because I've never been big on changing skates, because I only tried core pads, but maybe I just haven't tried the right ones. For the sensor, it has a 3395, so no complaints here. Even budget sensors are basically flawless these days. No complaints here and no tracking issues on a glass pad. Now for the juicy part. As I mentioned before, the shape is the exact same as the G305, and even the DPI button and the side buttons are exactly the same size and position. It was advertised as 64 grams, and in my scale it comes in at 65 grams. You can see that. Yep. Now this is how I grip the mouse. I would, at least on this mouse, use an aggressive claw grip. On some other mice it's more relaxed. For this grip it's pretty good, and I can't say anything about fingertipping as I just can't stand fingertipping outside of the desktop, but maybe it would be a different story if I had a fingertip mouse, but I never tried one. In terms of in-game performance, I had a good time with it, and the G305 shape is one of the most intuitive shapes for me to play with the only thing holding it back being the place where I rest my ring finger. It could be more comfortable, maybe not as an aggressive slope, but it's a shape that I don't have to think to aim with it, unlike some other mice I've tried, such as the MC1 and the Zowie S1. Generally speaking, it's a shape that gives me a pretty good balance between stability and micro adjustments, but a little bit more on the side of stability. Maybe because it is a little wide for the length or overall size of the mouse, even though it doesn't look like it, but that's because the actual grip is not where you see the bottom of the mouse. I feel reasonably responsive with the shape, but not too twitchy or unstable. Now the battery is advertised as 500 milliamp hours and it lasts quite a bit. On the charge out of the box I had to charge it around the week mark, running at 1000 Hz, so battery life seems decent. They claim 170 hours on a full charge, and I could see it happening on less than 3 hours of gaming a day, but it seems possible. Now on the software side, I did run into some issues the first that I got it. The web hub refused to load, and the downloadable web-based hub driver app had the same issue. Then I downloaded the mouse app and then it worked. And for some reason, days later, right now, I tried the web hub and it worked just fine. Maybe you'll have to download the mouse app first and update the firmware or something. And I'm going to show you here what you can find on the web hub. You can remap your buttons except the DPI button for some reason. Maybe if I create another profile. Nope. You can choose how many DPI levels you can have. You can have different X and Y. But for some reason it disappeared and showed up again. Okay, that's weird. You can have the Hibernate settings. I did have this at 20, at 30 before. I don't know why it changed. The polling rate, the bounce time, which was like 10 by default. The LOD setting, esports mode, which I'm not sure what it is, but I believe some mice like Baxi have that. I have absolutely no idea what game save mode is. Line control, which I believe is angle snapping. It does feel laggier. Feels like yeah, it's angle snapping. And motion sync, which I generally don't like because the implementations just feel weird on all the mice I've tried. Except on the Razer mice, I can't notice them in those. And you have your firmware update. This is the downloadable app, which has pretty much the same settings, and you can switch the DPI button function. The bounce time, DPI levels, polling rate, macros which are not available on the hub. Same configs as the web hub, except this one that doesn't show what it does. I have no idea what kind of bug is that. Now for connectivity, this mouse also has Bluetooth, which might be useful in case you lose a dongle and have to use Bluetooth for a few days while you get a replacement. Or you might just use Bluetooth if you play slow-paced games or working on a desktop, editing, stuff like that. And I believe the battery might even last longer in Bluetooth. The polling rate goes up to 8K, which, to be honest, I didn't even bother trying for more than a minute. It seemed to work fine, but I did try 4K for a bit longer and it seems stable, at least on Overwatch. Same with 2K. And one thing I did notice is that when I set to 1K Hz, the polling count seems lower on average to the other mouse I was testing, which is the MC1 wireless. And at least when doing slow movements, when I set the G3 to 2K or 4K, it seemed slightly smoother on the desktop, but I didn't notice any difference in game in a straight line. But when switching directions left and right, I did notice a difference. I believe that the lower polling count might be the reason. When you're stopping the mouse, the polling count drops lower than the other mice, and if you switch it to 2K or 4K, it feels more responsive because it was slower than the standard 1K mouse to begin with. If that's the case, then I believe it was on purpose, to sell higher polling rates. Now, I might be wrong, and it might just be my unit that is this way, but it's something to think about. In conclusion, for $50 you are getting a pretty good bang for your buck if you like the G305 shape, and if you can ignore the cable, and your unit doesn't get the creaky post travel on the left click. Thanks for watching, and sub and like if you like the video.